All right, we're live.
Sweet.
All right.
Well, maybe we start with a round of introductions. I'm Luke. I run go-to-market at Fly.
I'm Julie. I run the operations at Fly.
And I'm Chris. I am a staff engineer at Fly, and what that means for me is I get to work on cool stuff on open source and also some product work as of late. So let's talk about it.
So, Chris, I'm curious. I'd actually like to go all the way back to the start, and I would love to learn how you came to become a computer scientist or a software engineer or a programmer or however you self-identify.
Yeah, so a throwback to the TI calculator. So yeah, lots of us, I don't, maybe they use them these days, but lots of us olds. So the TI-83 Plus is what I owe my computer background to. Also breaking my back in football. We can talk about that too.
Oh.
But yeah, so I started programming on TI Basic on the TI-83 Plus calculator. It was like a calculator you're forced to buy. They're like $100 back then, and like they were like $100 some dollars. Like now, it's like it's a racket. But anyway, this calculator has a programming language on it, TI Basic, which is derived from the basic programming language, and super simple. A lot of like go-to jump statements, but I was able to make calculator games with it, as well as like things to like solve my math problems for me on math tests, which is kind of funny because like in solving, like, I think there's like a Pascal's triangle thing. I remember building one of these things, but like in solving the algorithm, like you have to necessarily learn how to do it. So anyway, it was like a way to check my work during tests.
Where were you when I was in high school? I
yeah, but that's
so badly.
That's where it started, and then the games were too slow, so I got into like assembly on the calculator to make fast games. But yeah, like literally like typing on the calculator.
Yeah. Okay, so but just a little more context just to sort of enrich the scene here. So this is high school. You were 13, 14.
Yeah, this is like I think this was 8th grade at the time.
Okay. Where?
So that's where that started. So then in like 9th grade or 10th grade, I mean, I'm not a tall person, but I broke my back as an outside linebacker. So I was a very small outside linebacker, but I was playing football first day of 2-a-days my sophomore year, and fractured my L5 vertebrae. So that ended my football aspirations, even though I don't think it would have gone much. I probably would have sat the bench. But anyway, I became like a full-time computer nerd at that point, because sports were kind of out for me after that injury. So learned like C and Java and various programming languages, and ultimately found PHP, which I thought was amazing because I could just type like $variable and stuff would show up on a web page. So got into web development and built a website, like a gaming website that became a business on my sophomore year of high school. So I went from, just like full-time computer nerd and like, started a company and had this like really unusual entry into web development and programming in high school.
Wait, what was the company?
It was a gaming website. So it was like a game sloth like the animal. And we were like number one. I say we, it was like one person company, but we were number one for internet games on Google for a number of years. Back when being on Google used to matter, search engine optimization, SEO.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so had a good run for that time. I outlived the birth and death of MySpace, and eventually things dwindled down. But I like to say that internet moves fast, and had a good run with that as an effort. But that's what really got me into web programming.
So was it was a game review site, or
it was like Flash
walkthroughs?
Games? I made a couple of my own, but a lot of these Flash games were like public domain, so it was basically like a Flash game index, as well as a number of like self-produced games, which I think are still out on the internet. I need to go find them.
Flash was such a throwback.
It is. It was like, and I didn't, everything was like guessing what I could do. So like, I think one of my games was called like Galactic Conquest, and like I couldn't get like it like threw up these lava balls, but like it quadratically would like go up and then like just like linearly like go down once it reached its peak, because I was just like, now I need to make this anyway. So it's it's like extremely bad, but in like the best way. I need to go see if it's. I'm sure it's still out on the internet somewhere, but
You should. All the Oregon Trail kids would love to get their hands on it. So when did this become like, this is what I want to do with my life?
so it never really became that. So I mean, kind of did. So the funny thing is, like, I just like not funny. Like the very privileged thing is like I do things and like paychecks show up in my life. So like got into programming, thought it was really cool, and then like accidentally started a company. And then most of my career has kind of been like that. It's like a pursuit of like things that are interesting. And then it became clear that like I like programming and I wanted to do it, but it's been mostly just like finding myself in these positions where I'm extracting a paycheck out of like doing something I'm enjoying. Yeah, I haven't quite figured that out yet, but yeah, I studied computer science in college, and it's definitely something I wanted to pursue, but it was more like the path I was already on. I think my senior year of college, I had like one class where I was like, oh, I think I learned something. But maybe it's gotten better since then. But yeah, I remember in college, like emailing, we were emailing like CPP files back and forth to like collaborate on a project. And I was trying to convince my teammates to use Git for version control, and we settled on a shared Dropbox instead. So anyway, college was an interesting experience programming wise.
Where did you go to college?
I started at Ohio State University, and then met my now wife and transferred to her school. It's Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio.
So the high school you attended, but also in Ohio.
Yep. And we did have a programming class then. I think it was Java at the time, but I had already gotten into Java. But at least, yeah, my programming classes in high school were, I feel like, not cutting edge, but probably better than most at the time.
Yeah. Interesting. So programming calculators, do you have a sense, I want to ask one more question about that. And that is, do you have a sense of like, what was it about programming the calculators that was interesting? I mean, it's sort of like you could focus on many different hobbies. Like, what specifically was it about that?
It's a good question. I mean, I think just like coercing a computer to do something is interesting and fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that was really it. And then like programming in general, I would say is like, it's like solving constant puzzles all day. Like it sounds terrible. And like my wife will call me like coding grumpy sometimes at the end of the day. So it's like this, there's something about this like trough of like, can't figure this out. I'm terrible. I'm the dumbest person. And then like, oh my God, I'm amazing. I figured it out. So there's something about that like problem solving process that I feel like is interesting to my brain, but definitely it's highs and lows.
Yeah.
It's like the hero's journey every time you
Yeah.
sit down in front of the
That's
terminal,
exactly,
right?
that's exactly what it is.
The
Yep.
all is lost and then the
Yes.
cresting the mountain. I can see how people would get addicted to that easily.
Yep.
Each time you descend into the underworld and emerge
Exactly.
Yep.
wiser, better.
And then something about the internet too. So I started that gaming website in 2003, which is like I think before Facebook was started. So it's just actually really interesting to watch.
Right before, yeah.
The birth of the internet. And I remember thinking like, Facebook at the time was just like a PHP website, and I remember thinking like how simple it was. Like, oh, anybody could build this, but yeah, it's been fascinating to watch. Just the internet grow in general, but I think this was right after the .com bust, and my parents actually tried to dissuade me from going into computer science because like it was a .com bust, and then there was a lot of offshoring of programming jobs, so it was like this is just a fad. But it's been wild to watch the internet. And I think part of the programming calculator was interesting, and then once I realized I could like write programs and then like distribute that on the internet like essentially for free. I mean, you had to pay for servers, but there was something about like, even to this day, like people using the software I make is really interesting and like pleasing to me. So I think there was something about like, oh, I can just drop this file over FTP and now like the whole world can use this thing, this program I wrote. That was something that continues to, I don't know, fascinate me.
It feels like magic. Is your wife a programmer also?
No, she's definitely not. She's a pediatrician.
Okay.
But she knows enough of the words. So like she could give, the joke is like, we need to have her give like a conference talk because she could like fill in enough words. Like 80% of her words would make sense, probably to the audience, even though she didn't know what she was saying. She's just heard enough of my conversations. But no, she's programming adjacent.
She knows the clip notes. I always am curious about that because I feel like, especially working at Fly, like it's such a subculture. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you get so deeply into it. Like it's very funny to me that, you know, people emerge at the end of the day and then like, you know, she has all the sick kids that she worked with that day. And, you know, it's interesting to kind of step away from it. I feel like I never leave because my husband is also in tech.
Oh yeah. Well, definitely. Yeah. My wife, she reminded me the other day that like she blew my mind because she was like, you get to use the bathroom whenever you want. And I was like, oh my God, like I've never, you know, it's like, I work remotely, but I have never even considered, you know, it's like, okay, you're right. Yeah. My day is definitely different.
Okay.
I really think that for the right kind of person, and I would absolutely put you in that category, that you know, running code it's such a magical thing. I mean, you sort of you type words on a keyboard and you know, the sort of the computer jumps to do your bidding and you click some buttons and millions of people all around the world can interact with this thing that you've built. And you know, particularly even with open source, like you put this thing in the world and then millions of people can modify it, build on it, add to it. It's really incredible.
Yeah, and I think I stumbled on like, you know, open source is, you know, something I wanted to intentionally get into. Well, one, my gaming website was like, it was fun, but you know, it was like serving Google AdSense to as many eyeballs as possible. So I wanted to like do something that I considered like altruistic or like positively contributed to society. I wouldn't say the gaming website was probably net negative. You know, the goal was to maximize ads. So yeah, open source was a way to like, one, give back to some like the tools I was using that were also open source, and also like feel like I was contributing positively to humanity.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting to me. Before I got into the tech world, I had no conception of the concept of what open source is and how like close to the heart a lot of people hold it. I don't know that there is an analogous concept in other fields, right? Like the idea that like we together as an industry are like holding these things up, sometimes things that are like holding up massive
oh yeah, it's
really
I would say maybe
academia,
but probably not as load bearing as the rest of the world. But it was like it was hard to explain to my wife too at the time of like, wait, you're just like doing all this for free.
right?
And it is very interesting. We've been tricked to do this for free, but no, it's
how did you like come across that concept for the first time, and what about it appealed to you?
Yeah, so I had gotten into Ruby and I was using Ruby on Rails, and that was, obviously an open source effort. And, through my work on the, advertising based website, I wanted to do something, like I said, that was positive. And I just said, I'd love to get into open source. And it just took me a number of years to actually make that happen. But like I tell people, like it turns out like if you just go like out and do things, like people are you do something useful, people are going to use the software you write. So I think like I had to get past this block of like not feeling like I could contribute properly or I was worthy of such a thing. But it turns out you just like start writing software and people use it, especially if you give it away for free.
It turns out people like free stuff.
Yeah, and my wife had she was in residency at the time, so I like to tell people that like I was working full time doing Ruby, and I got into Elixir, and really the only reason why Phoenix happened was like I was basically a bachelor for, I'm going to say 4 years, but it was actually residency was, it was like med school and residency. Anyway, so I had a lot of free time. So I was able to pretty much program all day at work, program all day at home. And it wasn't like I was sacrificing family life at the time, and then was able to find, a sustainable off ramp. But yeah, in the early days, it was just constant programming, and I was able to not, sacrifice relationships.
Yeah, no, I come from a medical family, so I very much understand the intensities of residency. So okay, so I'm curious. So for those of you who don't know, Chris McCord has created a programming framework, web development framework called Phoenix for the Elixir language. And I'm curious, Chris, why Elixir?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do real-time applications with Ruby on Rails, and Ruby was just not a good programming language to do that with. So I wrote some like prototypes that would push real-time updates, but it wasn't going to like work at scale. So I started looking around. Like,
why isn't Ruby a good language for this?
Yeah, so I could distill this into a tweet. No, so Ruby, it may have, there's some nuance here, but this is largely still true. So Ruby is a mutable language, and it did not support multi-core well. So what this means is basically like a program can run really well on one processor. So when like we had like Intel, whatever, Core, whatever, we went through those phases of your computer got twice as fast every year. Once we hit walls with how fast you could improve clock speed, we started adding more processors. So you had like the Intel Core Duo, and now we have our laptops have like 24 cores. So like we just started adding a lot more to computer cores to make our programs faster. But what that meant was for your computer to be faster, you had to have a programming language that was able to use all the CPU cores. And all programming languages historically essentially targeted just one CPU core. So you had to, if you wanted to make things go faster, you had to use like threading, and programming languages weren't well suited for the threading model. And threading has its own issues, especially if you have a mutable language, which I won't get into. But it turns out Elixir was written on the Erlang virtual machine that just like accidentally made the perfect language for multicore before multicores existed. So it's like this perfect language for multicore, and the internet was written in like the 1980s for like running telephone systems. And they just like accidentally solved all these problems in telephone communications that like work perfectly for like the modern internet and multicore age. So Elixir was like a modern language built on top of this like accidental amazing innovation, and that's how it kind of got into like, oh, this is like the perfect thing to do what I want. I just have to write a web framework to make it happen.
Interesting. So did you say Elixir has Erlang roots?
Yeah, so it runs on the Erlang virtual machine. So it's basically like Java has the JVM, Java virtual machine. So it produces bytecode, and that bytecode can be run on this virtual machine, whereas like a C program will compile to like assembly, will compile to like ones and zeros, and that goes straight to the processor. So like a VM is like this virtual thing that handles this like, bytecode, but it lets you do multi-core and a number of other things like without thinking about it.
So what has the experience been like of creating this thing that people are such huge fans of?
I mean, it's been fascinating. It's like, being able to find the path of open source, like in getting a paycheck in a sustainable way was, that's a tough chasm to cross. So I feel fortunate to have crossed that, to be able to continue doing this. But, the Erlang VM and Elixir, it's been fascinating because like everything has like lived up to the hype so far. I've been doing this for like 11 or 12 years now, since I started Phoenix. But it's like everything was like, I kind of stumbled my way into just like, I'm going to make this web framework. But then like it turns out it can scale to millions of connections on one server. So it's like everything has like fallen into place as I would have hoped, but it wasn't like I, had the extreme confidence at the start. So I feel like I've been like, I've had imposter syndrome along the way. To the point now that now that like I have lived this experience, I'm like, anyone that like gets on stage and claims to be an authority and that is overly confident, I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. Extremely suspect to me. I've just done the best I can at the time, and it's turned out, with the right technology, it's worked as well as I could have hoped, or everything I'd read about it. It's kind of lived up to the potential, which has been really fun to see.
So you were playing around with Erlang, and you walk me through sort of the thought process of how you came to the decision to create Phoenix, or the problems that you're trying to solve.
So I wanted, I said Rails, I wanted to have like something happens on the server and the web page updates. Should be easy, but it was extremely difficult, and it still remains extremely difficult in a lot of languages today. So I wanted to do that, but have it work really well, be easy, and then scale to a ton of people. And I had read that the WhatsApp application it was written in Erlang, and with like 19 engineers, they scaled to like it was 10 million users per server. So I forget how many bajillion users they had before Facebook ultimately bought them, but it was like insane scale with a tiny team. And I was like, I want to do that. And then I had remembered that Jose Valim, the creator of Elixir, he was prolific in the Ruby community, and he had announced on Twitter he was taking a break from being on the Rails core team to work on a new programming language. And I was like, oh yeah, that guy who was like this crazy thing, made his own language. Maybe I should check that out, because it was written to run on the Erlang VM. So that was kind of like the pre 1.0 Elixir days. So I got in at that point, thought it was exactly what I wanted, running on this thing that could scale to millions of users, and I just needed a web framework to complete the the circle.
Yeah. WhatsApp is probably, at least it's the application of Erlang that I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, and it may be in like C++ or Java now. I think that they eventually potentially rewrote it after Facebook bought them, but I'm not privy to that information. But I think it took them a number of years. I think that big companies don't do well with like these small teams. Like there's like a similar story with the Heroku router. Was an Erlang system.
Yep.
And it was, all traffic to Heroku went through this Erlang system, and it was maintained by two people. Salesforce bought them, and there was just these two folks that ran the whole Heroku router system and for years. And then I think they eventually wanted to rewrite it in Go, because that's became this like team of not one, team of two, but they were kind of this like weird entity inside the org. And I think it was eventually rewritten in Go, but it took like years of effort, and it's probably like a team of 20 people now. But anyway, yeah, there's just the interesting tidbits you hear of. I think the scale that Elixir and Erlang operate at, both in terms of like how well it scales on a server, and then the team size, is like sometimes incompatible with a large organization structure, at least the way folks think. I don't know. There's this weird correlation there.
Yeah, so I actually remember this. I used to work at Heroku. I joined right after that. The Salesforce acquisition.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah, I remember that the Erlang router team was like the people that were responsible for the router, I think, lived in the woods in the middle of Canada somewhere.
Come on.
And at the time, like, Heroku was mostly in person. This is sort of pre-COVID, and remote working was kind of the exception, not the rule. But we had these are some of the best Erlang people in the world. Like, they could do whatever, they could work from wherever they wanted.
The moon.
But I think that's really interesting. Your comment about how the sort of the efficiency of Erlang and Elixir and the Phoenix framework. It's almost big corporations like to they don't like bottlenecks comprised of one or two people, and they want to make sure that they can hire more people and maintain this thing. And it's interesting that the sort of the things that make this language so great are almost holding it back from maybe wider adoption in
Yeah, I mean, I
larger
don't think,
enterprise
yeah, I
settings.
think, it's like half jest that I say that. I don't think small teams and being able to ship something holds it back, but I do think in these large companies, I mean, it's often for political reasons, right? Like a new CTO comes in. When in the Heroku case, Salesforce bought them, and I'm sure the leadership org chart changed, and you basically just get one person in one position that just, decrees that this is what tech stack we're using, right? And
Mhm.
sounds good to stakeholders or board or their superior. We're going to standardize on just 2 languages, or and it just becomes the way it is. So I think that we've been able to reach critical mass in Elixir despite all that, and that's a hard hill to climb, because just convincing anyone to use any new technology is tough. So I think we still have, there's still those battles, but at least now it's like we've been around for over a decade. Things are, really, good as far as like we have case studies, and we still run into some of those things. But I think, yeah, the big org situations it's never really a technology issue, whether it's Elixir or not. You just have these, like I said, one person in one place just decide this is what they're going to do. Or in the worst case scenario, yeah, you have like someone with like very little programming background makes a deal with IBM, and it's just the tale as old as time, right? Like, this is what we're using because I went golfing with someone who I liked, and we gave them 10 million. We gave their cloud $10 million. So you got to pick your battle.
Yeah. So tell me more about the community that is sprung up around Phoenix and Elixir. Like, what are the people like?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with a couple open source communities at this point. I mean, by and large, I think like, we're older now, so it's just interesting now that like, initially it was a bunch of folks that were senior level, but like I would say the figureheads of the community, obviously, we're 10 years older now, but I do like to think we came in with like a perspective of like being a welcoming place, because community is like when you're building open source project and ecosystem, it's about like half of it's marketing. Like, you got to market yourself and capture a net, and then you also want people to come in and dip their toes, and then like you want to help them like cross that frustration gap of like learning a new language, new paradigm. And so early on, we definitely, I mean, not we, I personally focused on like trying to answer every question possible that like someone asked on like IRC or Slack, and to try to like one, help people get past this gap, then also like try to set like a good standard of like behavior, I guess. So it's like, I wanted to be a good role model in that regard. So I think we've done a good job of like early on like establishing those norms, and then the people in the community, it's just like any group of humans. It's just kind of fascinating. Like you have these norms that are established, and then people kind of like multiply the message. So I feel like we did a good job in the early days of, yeah, just like not putting up with a-hole behavior, I guess. So I think we have a very welcoming community, and a lot of that is, I think, necessary to have a long-term sustainable project. I mean, you could grow a project and have it work well, but if it's not fun to be in, then people aren't going to be enthusiastic about it.
I feel like we can see that already. I mean, we'll get to this in a second, but obviously Phoenix.new, the incredible new thing that you have been working on, the comments from the community seem fake. Because they are so good and so nice. Like, as we've been watching them come in, we're like, well, we know Chris wouldn't fabricate these, but like,
they look like
people who are like
comments.
Right, like people who are just so excited about the possibilities of like what can be done here, that they're like, okay, so I'm having like these like couple of support issues, but also this is the best thing I've ever used in my entire life. Can I give you more money? So I don't know if
I'm having a bad time, but also I'm very happy about it.
Well, it seems like most people are good fun. Yeah. Anyway, I feel like that comes through even in just like the commercial transactions with them on this new project. But I feel like we should talk about the new project.
Yeah, well, one more comment on this before we transition to Phoenix.new, because yeah, I'm also would like to talk more about that. But yeah, I think it's interesting how the I often find that the sort of the cultural DNA of any company or project is very much a reflection of the founder. And yeah, I think kudos to you for being the kind of person that embodies these values, because I think that, yeah, it's for that founding DNA is sort of coming directly from you and from your values.
And Jose Vlim as well has done, the creator of Elixir. I mean, amazing job trying to set the standard for interactions and handling gracefully all the negative things that come by on the internet. So he's a saint in that regard. He'll turn so for me, yeah, just like an aside, negative comments for me are they're not good, obviously, mental health wise, but I won't engage with someone they'll be dead to me if they're going to be an a-hole. But Jose is able to be turn any negative comment, he'll still be able to glean value from that. And that, not that he welcomes them, but it's if someone has this response of that's not at all productive and not the way to go about voicing any kind of opinion, he'll still be oh, but what are they trying? But here could actually be better, even though they decided to engage in a super negative way or toxic way. So anyway, I'm not capable of that. So anyway, he's done an amazing job in that regard of still trying to extract what could we actually pull out of this in a positive way. And I'm just yeah, I can't deal with this.
I'm curious if you could distill those values into sort of 3 or 4 bullet points. What would they be?
Yeah, bullet points would be tough. I mean, I think in general, it's just you're trying to, it's literally you're building a community, open source community. That word is sent around a bunch, but it's literally you're building a group of humans that you are interacting with. So you want that to be just in your own neighborhood or professional environment. You want to be around people that you want to be, the people you're surrounded by should be people that you want to be around. And there should be some level of acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior in the same way that we have that for any kind of community event in the real world. So I think it would be miserable if we had a toxic community that was just, stomping on other people and being disrespectful. So I think it's just the golden rule is really what we're after here, right? We're here to have a good time and try to have a positive impact on the world and each other's, products that we're building. So let's actually, be friends and not be terrible. There you go. There's my bullet points.
Beautiful.
Be nice because you should be nice.
Distilled. I like it.
There we go.
I feel that's a particularly hard thing to enforce these days, right? I feel the pandemic also sort of accelerated that, and it can be increasingly difficult to have your professional identity located in a space where people are just wild animals when they get behind a keyboard, right? So you're building a community for the furtherance of this technology, but it also is a respite for people to find a place to be where it's safe, it feels mentally healthy to be.
Yeah. It's particularly in these fractious, polarizing times. It's
kind of, yeah.
And it's amazing.
I think a beautiful thing to find these little pockets of.
Yeah, how much a negative comment will suck energy out, or dealing, or just dispelling. A lot of times I feel I have to correct the record, right? Because let's say on Twitter is it's a public space, so I feel I need to correct the record, not because I should be engaging with this toxic behavior, but it's since this is a public space, it's I need to be yes, but let me correct the record here on this, not for you, but for the people that may be seeing this, and that just sucks a huge amount of energy, which is unfortunate. But yeah, internet's a rough place.
Yeah, indeed. So switching gears to talk about Phoenix.new, I think before that, I'm curious to hear more about your journey with AI. And I would imagine that there was some skepticism initially, or maybe curiosity. I'm just curious how.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I wasn't I didn't go through a skeptic phase, but it was like I think like a revelation or revelatory phase, however you should put it. So I think, it was clear to me with like ChatGPT 3. I remember like my wife and I were, outside of programming, it was clear that we reached this inflection of like, this is gonna change the world, right? Like, holy shit, like everything's, we're living through this time where we can, it's like when the telephones were invented or electricity, like, we acknowledged that, like, I think we had like GPT writing like only one that could do like poems and stuff, but then we had it write like I came up with, like, I acted like I was like, pretend you're a pediatrician, and I know a few medical words, but I had it like write a note for I think my son had like a ear infection or something. Anyway, so I had it write, like, based on, I was like, as a non-medical person, I was like, write a patient note of 2-year-old with a ear. Anyway, and it came up with what she described as like 90% of like what she would have written.
Wow.
And this was like ChatGPT 3. So at that time, I mean, I thought that like this is going to change the world. But then programming, like, it could basically make Elixir apps, not apps. It could write Elixir code that you were like, wow, it actually like could write code that looks like Elixir, but it wasn't. You couldn't even take that and run it in any way. But it was still like compelling on like, oh, it can almost write like a live view module. This is cool. And then it became more and more useful over time, where I was like copying and pasting code back and forth, where it was like a good starting point or debugging flow. And I wasn't skeptical. I was using it as like a force enabler, but it wasn't until like GPT-4 where you were like, okay, this is like actually like can write compelling code. So I think it's been like a natural progression for me, versus being skeptical. I didn't think it would progress as well as it has as far as like programming, as far as like existential crisis. I'm like, are we even going to write code anymore? But for me, it was like this natural progression of like, use it to write like wrote things like I wanted like to seed some data with like a bunch of random usernames. I would just ask ChatGPT, copy paste, and then it turned into like more and more leaning on it to write code.
So not any initial like skepticism or worry, and more just like, I'm
yeah, I mean, the worry,
here.
I've kind of like worried all along on what this means, but the progression has not been skeptical on like I feel like the hype has been valid. Where this goes, no one knows, but all along the way, It's been like, okay, there's something here that's useful. Even just from any sector you look at that involves any knowledge work, and it's just been, the pace of improvement has been wild. And then with like the Phoenix.new effort, it wasn't until so I think when ChatGPT 4 came out, this became evident to a lot of people, but I feel like I was late in this regard, where it's like I was copy and pasting between ChatGPT or Claude, and that was like, being super force multiplier for my work. But it wasn't until like you just do that copy paste workflow in a programmatic loop that like now you can just have these things just like write real software and iterate on themselves writing that software. And that was the real revelation when Kurt, Fly CEO, told me to take 6 to 8 weeks and kind of like prototype this like little marketing open source effort. And it turned into this like, oh my God, like this is far beyond what I could have thought. The same technology I'm using, copying and pasting, it just turns out if you just like replace the copy paste workflow with this like slow human, and you just give the AI the feedback that you would be giving it anyway, right? Like, oh, this error happened. You paste the error, and then ChatGPT is like, oh, this is why, change your code to this, and you put the code back in your editor. It still errors. Like if you just replace that with a program that you write, and then it just like starts doing magic and making these, I'm going to say, decisions that seem exactly like what a person would do. So it wasn't until late last year where I changed from not a skeptic. I changed from a happy copy paste AI user to holy shit, this is like going to change everything faster than I would have thought. Like by next year, I feel like the vast majority of our code is not going to be typed out on a keyboard type thing. So anyway, I had a quick revelation progression from a non-skeptic to the timelines being like way faster than people are gonna think. Like you're gonna be a dinosaur in 2026 if you're pecking keys out on the keyboard predominantly. People are going to think you're crazy. And I think people are coming around to this now. But it was, December last year where I hadn't internalized that until kind of experiencing it.
Do you remember the moment where what did you experience that sort of shifted that for you?
So like Kurt, Fly CEO was like, Chris, we have this Spy Machines platform that's good at running sandbox code. And there is some real risk in, I guess, the Elixir community, or some fear that as AI tools get better, these LLMs are really good at writing like JavaScript, a lot of things that they've seen before that are more popular than Elixir. So there's some fear in the community that we're going to become irrelevant because everyone's going to go to the AI machine and say, give me some code, and it's never going to spit Elixir out. So it was kind of like a dual marketing thing that I was going to work on for Fly, where we would have a text area on a web page, and it would write like a full Elixir app. Like, could we do that? And it would kind of serve as a marketing for Fly, serve as marketing for Phoenix. And it turned out like 6 weeks into that, we had this like thing that looks like what Phoenix.new is now, right? Like a full editor. It gave you preview apps. So like in a very short timeline, we had this thing where like, oh my God, this could be a product. And not only that, like to answer your question, like the revelation along the way was like just getting it to work in this like recursive loop where like you just feed the output back to itself. Like I started like doing things, and then like the goal was just to convince it to like now write this file, now write this file. But then like it turns out like you would run into cases where like a program wasn't installed, and then it would just like install it. So it was a revelation for me on just seeing what I'm going to say decisions that were being made that like I didn't have to write or coerce at all. It was like I was just trying to get it to this like golden path of making Elixir Phoenix application. And then like it turns out you could just ask it to do pretty much anything, and it will just like brute force its way to do that. So it's just like I could probably have like hundreds of examples. I mean, one is like when there was a port, like I tried to start a server and there was a port conflict. So the AI just started like writing commands to like kill the thing on the port that was running. So it listed all Phoenix servers that were running. This is before I sandboxed the development itself. So it ended up killing itself because it was like, oh, there's a port conflict. Let me just find all things running an Elixir Erlang VM and just kill those things so I can run the thing. And then like I got the loading bar at the top of the page because like it just went and like before I could stop it, it killed itself, right? Like it's like so you get into these things where you're like, like the big red button scenarios where like this wasn't a crisis. I just restarted everything. But it was clear so that funny, like though. I couldn't even stop it from taking this I'm going to say disastrous action fast enough. And this is like now, right? So now we go, you go forward in the future where like these things are going to be running faster than we can probably comprehend. And you're like, okay, so it just been some like both positive and negative revelations on like, oh my God, like this is going to be a thing where you just let these things go off and do things. And we hope it's going to be a work out for the best. But the other one was like, I guess recently I had, it wrote a Phoenix Live View game where it was like a collaborative pixel Microsoft Paint type thing. And then I had asked it to write Hello Phoenix on the canvas, and it just nailed it. Like so it wrote a program to click and type out draw out Hello Phoenix. And I think I tweeted that like 20 years ago we would have called this like AGI, right? There's a lot of like the artificial general intelligence goalposts keep moving. Like it used to be like once a chat app is a convincing human, we've reached AGI, and now like everyone chats to AGI every day. We're like, that's not AGI, but it's like just asking it like it's like, so this thing I wrote to coerce this program to make Phoenix apps, you can ask it to then use that app that it wrote. It ends up writing JavaScript to click parts of a page on a grid of a certain dimensions, and then it perfectly nailed like the shapes of the letters in that. Anyway, so I'm like, I just don't. Wow. This like everyone says like, oh yeah, it's next token prediction, right? But like there's something else going on there that like I don't believe that like a next token predictor. I don't know. We don't know how these things work, but there's been just like cases like that where you're like, that shouldn't be possible. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can spit out code, but like, how did the, like I said, I attribute, like, I anthropomorphize these things, but like, how did it make the choice and having the knowledge to be like, oh yeah, I can like type out letters on this grid? I don't know. It's wild.
Yeah, it really is fascinating to me how these models really are just complete black boxes. I mean, we've made some progress in interpretability, but they're almost like biological systems that need to be
Yep.
studied through that lens, which is unlike anything else in computer science.
Yeah.
Feels like.
We just put the guardrails on and let them go. But I think that like that's unsettling. But I also think that like that it's not going to matter. Like I don't think that like I know that like I mean advancements could happen in any point, but I think that we'll make these black boxes will be reliable enough, and it probably will be like a turtles all the way down scenario where you'll just have like another black box verify the black box
Right.
to make sure nothing bad happened. You know, yeah, you're the, you know, however much hate that the full self-driving in Tesla gets, that like that magic black box can drive my car for me from point A to B on more often than not basis from door to door. Like, yes, it could try to kill me at any moment. It's not perfect, but like I still have a magical black box that like can drive my car somewhat reliably. Like I said, we're not there yet for as far as like hands off, let's say unsupervised, but you're like, it's going to be black boxes everywhere. That's clear to me. We're only going to be limited by what compute and power. And as things get more efficient, it's just going to be more black boxes.
Yeah.
That much is clear.
Yeah.
It's just going to be more usage. It's not going to be like, more efficiency is just going to be more and more of this because they're broadly applicable, right?
I think, one of the things that's fascinating to me about AI is it feels like in some ways, like it's this incredibly advanced alien technology, but there's something about the way that we interact with it that feels more ancient and primal in a way. Like it's sort of, through a certain lens, it can feel like, trying to sort of understand the whims of the gods, or living in this world that sort of ancient peoples lived in, where there are spirits and there are forces that are sort of that we don't understand, and figuring out how to navigate that.
Yeah, and they're also like oddly portable. So I do wonder that, like, if you just take all of the world's information, does this just like, is this the natural consequence of whatever transformer architecture? Like, it just seems like this is what happens. Like, I could take Grok 4 or Gemini 2.5, OpenAI's 4.1 or Cloud Sonnet, and like they all, with the same system prompt, will do close to the same thing. I mean, some are better than others, but it's like, it's remarkable that this thing we don't understand, we don't understand how it works or why it works as well as it does, but like I can then take these magical spell incantations and shop them around, and I can make the black box to do the same things. So I don't know. I can't explain that either. So I don't know. Yeah, it seems like we're all like, all these models are headed down the same path, and I don't know if, unless the first person to reach artificial super intelligence, which is like the goalposts keep moving, but I think unless someone hits this system that can make itself faster than humans can make their own systems faster, I think everyone is just going to be marching towards the same outcome. I mean, right now, like, it's like you wait 3 weeks and there's a new model basically right now, and it's just like marginally better. But until we have a model that can make it itself outrageously better, I think everyone's going to be the whole like there is no moat seems true to me, because it's just like if a new model comes out, like, what is it? It's not August yet, but ChatGPT 5 is around the corner. We can throw that on Phoenix.new with a one line of code change, and then boom, we could have a better system, or not. We'll find out. But it's like remarkable how portable these magical things are. You just have to guess with these spell incantations to make them do things. But it's also like it's just wild to me. Like, I thought this would be a lot harder. Like, going through this process of like, you just write in like dumb English, like, don't do this or do this, and then this black box like mostly follows what you ask. Like, there has to be some level of like sometimes you have to like smack it on the wrist, repeat yourself, or like the system prompt is kind of hilarious because there's like, there's the joke is like, or you go to jail. Like, our system prompt does not threaten the black box, but there's some things like, I have to like screaming case caps some things, like you are forbidden from doing this for times that like it just like occasionally does the wrong thing. But by and large, it's mostly just like, here's how you should behave, and you like correct the behavior you're seeing. And it's kind of like a kid. Like it's for the most part it follows it. Sometimes you're like, why did it do that? But
don't make us think of it as a kid, Chris. It's so creepy.
it's like the world's most intelligent child.
Okay, gross. Go back.
Yep.
Go back the other way. But
yeah,
I think
the thing is like they're really good. They're really good human approximators. Like and this is also a scary thing, right? Because like as far as like coercing people to do things, but like it's funny that like they're trained on human interaction, so it makes sense. But like the same way that LLMs filter with programming is like my experience, like the same way that humans have trouble. So like the things that people in the community are getting tripped up on Phoenix is the same thing that the LLM is getting tripped up on, which kind of makes sense because like the data, like so it makes sense that there would be a correlation there. But I think
sure, like
there's been this insight that I can't quite like put into words on, like they're like the perfect human. They're amazing at pretending to be humans. That's what I'll say, for good and terrifying reasons, right? You're like
totally.
they struggle with the same things that we struggle with, and that also makes them really good at pretending that they have feelings.
I think the other thing that is so crazy about it though is, and I say this as like a fairly non-technical person, like something like this feels like the gateway to a completely different economy, honestly,
Yep.
right? Like, in the world order as it stands today, right? Like I could have the most fleshed out, interesting idea, but I have to have some sort of capital in order to make it happen, whether it's like investment in my own ability to learn how to code or to pay somebody else to do it for me. And this, like when you're talking about like being around when like the telephone was invented or something, like this feels like an analogous experience. Like all of a sudden this entire body of work is now just open for the taking. I can't even begin to imagine what that's going to look like, except to make things more democratic. I like wrote in some internal thing like, means of production, and like people made fun of me,
Yep.
justifiably so. But I feel like some version of that is a little bit true.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of like viscerally negative thoughts about AI, and there's, I'm sure, negative consequences that we both are aware of that are probably going to happen, but I mean, stuff that we haven't even thought of. But I will say, like, what I tell people is like, for me, it's like, this is where we're at. So we're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. And I think regardless of what folks' ethical dilemmas are or environmental impacts, is like this basically is going to eat the world. Like there's no question about that. I don't think that you're going to be able to, I mean, unless you start your own non-AI society, you're not going to be able to get away from it. So it's very much a like embrace or else situation, I think, regardless of how you feel about it. But in general, though, like I've been able to ship things faster than I could have ever thought possible. I mean, Phoenix.new is a good example. Like the velocity that I've had with that, like the whole experience has been like a revelation. But like building these things that and tying these pieces together, it's basically just been a constant LLM loop. Even outside of using Phoenix.new, even though I've used Phoenix.new to build parts of Phoenix.new, it's been this like, well, how am I going to do that? It's like, oh, I'll just go ask the Borg and it will tell me. And it's been this like capability increase that I think the folks that are discounting LLMs are just going to become like prop makers in the CGI era, where it's tragic that we lost this art form and people lost their income building things with their hands, but like nonetheless, like CGI ate the world. And I'm not saying that's like a good thing, but that is what happened.
It's just descriptive. Yeah.
Right. That is what happened. So it's like, I feel like we have to address that this is happening, and the folks that are just like naysayers are just gonna, I think, in a accelerated timeline, look back and be like, oh wow, this happened like next year. Like next year, typing on a keyboard for a big block of code is going to be like a punch card type situation where like people used to actually have to like punch pieces of paper and then feed it into a big mainframe. Like it's going to be a similar foreign concept to programmers, but in like instead of on the order of decades, in like a year.
Right. Yeah.
Like even now, like
really...
I type. I like to tell people, like, personally for me, like anytime I go to Google anything, I have this thought, like I stop, like what am I doing? Like why would I ask Google and then like go through search results and have to like filter out the ads and then click on an article, find the thing I'm looking for? I'll just ask ChatGPT, fully aware that this is maybe not a good thing, right? Like I'm just gonna go ask this magic black box, and it's probably, like, I'm aware like it's probably gonna give me the approximate answer that I'm looking for. But I'm aware that, like, you know, we're eventually going to rely on these oracles, as kind of like Luke was saying, more and more, where it just becomes like this wisdom machine. But that same thought process is happening with code now, where like if I'm going to go type out a full file of a program, I'll be like, why? You know, I'll start it. I'll be like, wait, why am I doing this? Like, I'm just going to go ask an LLM to start it for me. I'm not going to. It's not going to be the end of my work product, but it's going to be the beginning. And doing it otherwise by hand would just be like a, you know, artisan bespoke thing, right? Where like, you know, some woodworkers like using hand tools only, but some people just want to build a bookshelf. I know. I mean, I'm a woodworker, but I think it's been a revelation for me with how fast it went from, oh yeah, I don't Google things anymore, to, oh yeah, I'm not going to write all this code by hand anymore, right? And that's like, hasn't been a great thought, but it's been. But it's been my lived experience where I'm like, of course I wouldn't write this by hand to start, right? That's just a waste of time. So that's happened, over the last, I'd say, maybe February this year, where I really just started leaning more and more into LLMs as this like bulk starting point. Gets me, 50% of the way there, 75% of the way there, and then I'll fiddle with the bits on the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think to me, what is going to be really interesting to see is, what does a world look like where intelligence is no longer scarce, and sort of specialized knowledge is no longer hard to access. I think prior to LLMs, in order to build a Phoenix application, frankly, it's never something I would have attempted. Yep. And I think most people that in that previous world would attempt to build a Phoenix application or play around with Elixir or dive into the sort of the inner workings of that running a virtual machine. Kind of person that did that was kind of had a similar trajectory to yours, where they stumbled into this thing early in their lives, that they really sort of deeply resonated with the problem solving hero's journey that really kind of scratched that itch. And, as a result, spent decades solving these kinds of problems. And now all of that experience and that knowledge is sort of compressed into this oracle of sort of our modern oracle of Delphi that we can, summon, from which we can summon.
That's right.
Phoenix programs. And
if it goes down, people already freak out, right? They're like, how can I get anything done? But I do think, there's a broader existential crisis for, I think, every profession that we can talk about. But I think in the immediate term, I think it's an amazing enabler for experienced people. But I also think, like, for people just getting into your point, like they just want to build something. Like my entry into, like, I want to build a web page, right, that like can show how things work. Like I remember visiting like MSN.com, right? This is when MSN Messenger was a thing. Like I remember visiting. I learned HTML, and there was like a site. It was like davesite.com. I have to see if it's still available. This guy wrote like a HTML tutorial. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I can make HTML, but I was like, how does MSN show like the current time on their web page, or like the weather? I'm like, there's no way someone's like uploading an FTP file every time, right? So like there must be like some way to dynamically insert a value there, and that's where like PHP came in, where it was like, oh, you can literally write the markup, and so it's been this amazing revelation on like just how I had to like intuit how a web page would work, and then like through, I'm assuming, some Googling, like, oh, PHP is a thing. How does that work? And then I was using like Notepad on Windows 98 to write my PHP files, because I didn't know how to like a IDE or editor worked, right? So there'd be like a missing semicolon. There was no syntax highlighting. So I would spend like 2 hours on like, oh, and I didn't have error messages enabled. So like anytime there was an error, it was just a blank web page. So I had to go like figure these things out. So this is all to say that like people are worried about junior developers now. So like, how is anyone ever going to learn anything ever again? Which I think is reasonable on like education in general. I don't know what this looks like, but I think if we just say the immediate effects of like a junior programmer with today's state-of-the-art models, like imagine I had that back in 2003. Like I would have, like the amount that I would have been able to deliver would have been incredible, instead of like funneling my way through to start the business that I did. So I think, yeah, to your point, Luke, that how many businesses could we see created and novel things from folks that are able to close this gap much faster than just like scouring the internet forums like I had to do back in the day.
Yeah.
So I think that there's, for juniors, if the other way I put it is like the same people that have like copied and pasted from Stack Overflow and been what we consider bad developers, like those people will still exist, but the people that are gifted and intelligent, that would have gone, given the time and resources to go on to become like great creators, those people now are going to be able to condense that time to like order of magnitude less. So that's kind of my like positive thoughts. But then like the where does it go when we no longer have to actually create anything at all? And then you become like, well, I don't know what society looks like. So in the near term, it's this amazing force enabler for people that want to just do things, whether that's legal work. I mean, basically it's broadly applicable. But like where that goes into, like you even see it now. Like I can ask Phoenix.new, like you don't even have to tell it what you want to build. You can just be like, build something for me, and it will come up with like really remarkable ideas. Or you can give it like a database to connect to, and it will just offer applications to build based on what it sees. So like you can already see it's removing this creative thought process for you entirely, where you're like, or it will say next steps. And one of the favorite things that I had with Phoenix.new is like it offers you choices on like how to proceed next. So it's like you almost get into this like flow, so we can call it vibe coding, but you get into this flow where like you no longer even have to think about what you're doing. You're just like, oh yeah, that sounds good, or that it's like it's removing you from even like the nuance of like what should I be doing next, because it's telling you what it's going to do or what you should be doing. So I don't know, as we progress through that, where you can see like, well, where are we other than in the way? And you can kind of see it too with some of Google's models like Gemini Flash. It's not good enough to write like a full app, but it's really fast. And if you give it enough minimal tasking, it's still really useful and it's really cheap. But it's so fast that like if I run it on Phoenix.new and try to make a full app, it will get like, I'm going to say 75% there and then kind of crash out. But while it's building the app, it's so fast that you lose track of what it's doing. So it's been my first it's been my first existential crisis on, if technology progresses the same way computing has, where like Gemini Flash is going to be slow in, probably 5 years from now. So if we take Claude 4, which is what we're using in Phoenix.new, and it was at Gemini Flash speeds, it would already be fast. It would already be so fast that I would lose track of what it's doing. It would just be like, brr, 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 now I'll do this, now I'll do this, now I'll do this, and here's your app, right? And you, as a human, you're just going to be there in the way while it's doing this. So I was able to kind of see, using Gemini Flash, that this is definitely where we're headed. And at that point, what does programming look like? Because right now you're kind of like, you can watch what it's doing and stop it and be like, no, do this. But at the point where it's so fast that it's going to take you longer to write the prompt than to get the result, that's going to be wild, right? And then if it gets cheaper, like, so now imagine you go to something like Phoenix.new and you say, write this application for me, and in less time than it took you to write your prompt, you have 10 versions of that app. Like, I feel like this is where we're headed, right? Like, it's not going to be sit there and watch it. You're just going to actually get like 10 versions of the thing and choose the one you want and discard the rest. So at that point, yeah, I don't know what anything looks like, because it's just going to be more and more, and we'll see.
What a world.
Yeah.
What a
Right.
time to be alive.
Well, I certainly hope, that we're able to land in this sort of the most optimistic version of this future where we are able to create abundance with these tools, and humans are free to spend their time doing human things, following our human curiosities. And
Yeah, I mean, people still use, like, if we go back to woodworking, like I have hand planes, and I actually just used a hand plane this past weekend. But only for just to take a sliver, just to level out. So anyway, so it's like, I still enjoy and appreciate hand tools, but it just depends on the context of what I'm doing, right? If I have an end product of, I'm trying to, I'm building part of our bathroom vanity, and like that, I'm using power tools, right? That's not a bespoke artisanal experience. I just need to build a box, and it's got to have a couple doors on it, right? So I think in a perfect world, we move towards that, where humans still can do, art still has value and meaning, even if a computer can generate it. But I don't know the knock-on effects of, like, what does it mean if the creative process, like, of my job, right? Like, I enjoy programming because I'm building something, but at the point I'm just like asking a computer to build something, because right now it's this enabler where it's like it's allowing me to build something. But if I'm just completely removed from the creative process, does that suck away the happiness I derive from my work? I don't know the answer to that. Or maybe it enables it, right? Maybe it wasn't the programming in general. Maybe it was the actual creative process, right? And it doesn't seem like that's the case for me, because I enjoy the problem solving. But maybe it's like just building things. I mean, that's where I've derived my happiness throughout life, right? Whether it's woodworking or frameworks and open source, it's mostly just like, can I build this thing? So in that regard, maybe it's, for me personally, maybe if I'm not writing much code and the computer's doing it, maybe I could still derive that satisfaction. But for a lot of folks, like, if you're a digital artist, there's, I can't imagine that being a happy experience, where like now you don't create anything, you just review images that the computer created. That seems like a huge loss.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like where we are in the world right now is highlighting the fact that, like, we've built a lot of complicated, beautiful tools, but there are so many existential problems that human intelligence needs to solve, right? Like the woodworking tools is a really great example, right? Like, it's fun to use a wood plane when you're vibing out on like a small project, but like, what about when everybody in your town needs a bed, right? Like, that's a moment when it would be a wonderful, beautiful thing to be able to turn our tools towards that, right? And like, coding can be artisanal, but it also fundamentally is just a way for a human being to tell a computer how to display something so that we can share information or execute a process, right? And so if people in the world who have spent their educational lifetimes becoming doctors, or pick the beautiful discipline of your choice, then have no barriers to being able to solve those problems without capital. Let's not even get into the billionaire of it all, right? Like, that to me feels like the most hopeful outcome of this.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Won't be long.
It's
not like, we'll see you in 10 years. No, it's like, well, we'll have the same conversation next year.
Let's check back in November.
November, that's right.
Well,
GPT-5 next month, so maybe we'll just reconvene.
Okay.
And,
Halloween then.
And it seems like no matter what happens, humans are still going to want to create and fall in love and search for meaning.
Yeah,
I think so too. And I think that, the exciting thing, if we tie it back into to Phoenix.new, what I've been working on is like with GPT-5 coming out, we just get to sit back and wait for the fruits of all this labor and innovation to like I said, one line change, and now it can make even better applications. So I think it's been super fun to be part of this ride, and it's interesting just to build something and then you just like wait for these gifts from these big huge companies. And it's nobody's making money in this space, right? But it's just very weird time, right? Everyone's competing. It's almost like a moonshot, right? It's like companies or countries versus countries, companies versus companies. And at the end of this, you have all these downstream consumers and products that right now we get to reap all these rewards and figure out how to apply them. So certainly exciting for me to be in this space. And with Phoenix.new, it's we made it to be asynchronous out of the box. So right now you go there and you can vibe code an app, but I'm really interested in the you just fire and forget something and then it's done, regardless of if you were present or not. And I think that is probably the future of software development, where we're just asking these things to do things for us and then we pop back in to see what happened. Which developers don't like, right? We're very proprietary with our environments and we don't like to run things in the cloud. But I do think the moment LLMs can do useful things with us not present, which is already the case, that these things are just going to be working on our behalf for us, because that's going to make the most sense. And that's now, and it's the worst it's ever going to be. So I think that's where we're headed. And I think it's interesting to think about what infrastructure looks like and what Fly looks like in that case. But I think it's just going to be more models, more agents running not on our computers, even though I'd love that, right? There are components of local models, but I think right now it's these things are just off running somewhere in the sky, just like Apple Music, right? I play a song and the song plays and I'm not thinking about the servers, right? And I'm a programmer too, right? I think people still bemoan that their MP3 collection that they owned is now useless and they just rent these songs from companies. But the other way to think about it is I have now just shed that knowledge of what happens. If I want to listen to a song, I hit play, right? It's not do I want to buy this for 99 cents like iTunes back in the day? No, it's like water on a tap. I turn it on. And I think creation is going to be like that. You just or as Julie said, basically knowledge, right? It's just any knowledge you want, it's going to be turning water out of the tap. How do I do this? And it's going to, things are going to happen for you.
Yeah, I had this move the other day. So I live in Sea Ranch, California, which is a small town on the coast. And the sort of the local airport is Sonoma County, small airport. You cannot get an Uber from Sonoma County Airport to Sea Ranch because it's a 90-minute drive on a very narrow, windy 2-lane road. So I was curious about finding a car service the old-fashioned way, and I used OpenAI's operator agent to make the bookings, and it was very similar to handing off the task to an assistant.
Did it work? I've never tried. I haven't tried it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I need to. I would like a quote from car services for this ride on this date at this time, and it just pulls up it fires up its own computer and its own web browser and goes and finds the sites and fills out the forms for you. If it gets stuck, it'll very politely ask for you to sort of take things over and enter a password or amusingly solve a CAPTCHA to prove that you're a human.
I won't try it. That's funny. They probably trained it not to, even though it can. That's amazing, actually.
And it's clear that it's not perfect now. But it's amazing how quickly things have progressed. One of the projects I was working on before I joined Fly was playing around with agents on GPT-3 level models, and we built a Chrome extension that could order you coffee, and you got stuck in a loop. It navigated to the Starbucks website and then immediately started adding 15 frappuccinos to the shopping cart.
Where's the problem?
You haven't explained the bug yet.
And at the time that the models just weren't good enough at staying on task. but that's changed quite significantly in the last 2 years. And
Yeah, they're remarkably good about doing exactly what you would expect them to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, like
Chris, I think this is where your earlier metaphor breaks down.
that's true. Oh yeah, believe me. Oh yeah, especially the last 2 days. Yeah, it's been very extra here lately. Yeah, just getting pajamas on is a 15-minute process. But you're right. Yeah, not a whole lot of similarities. Yeah, and one of the cool things that I'm actually hoping to ship today is our agent can make minimal modifications to a file. Like if instead of rewriting the whole file, it's able to make small changes, and it does that with a sed command, which is like a find replace thing. But I have a thing I've been working on to have it. It writes code now to edit its own code, and that seems to be remarkably capable, which is also fascinating. So it's like it's writing a program to change the program that it wrote, and that's where you get into this like existential thing of like it's like a once these things can write their own code, which they can, these vibe coding app generators is the thing writing code, but once it can write code that changes its code, you get into this like ASI situation, right, where it's like it's just it can then recursively self-iterate on itself. But it's just wild watching it, write code to change code that it wrote. And one thing I'm doing with that is fascinating is like some of these companies have released fine-tuned models where to change, like I think Cursor does this. If you have a huge file that you want to change without rewriting it, and we'll go in, we don't have to talk about reasons why rewriting the file makes sense, but it's hard to get the LLMs to change things perfectly. Usually you have to rewrite the whole file to actually have a valid program. But they've been specialized models that they use a smart model like Claude or OpenAI's models or Gemini to describe the changes, and then they'll pass that off to a really cheap fast model to make the minimal correct changes to the file. So the fascinating thing with what I've been working on is like I have it write a program to change the program, and that gets it right about, I'm going to say 80% of the time, where it will actually work exactly like you would hope. And there are some times where it will mess up and like, leave off cause a syntax error or something. And in that case, I pass off to a dumb model like Gemini Flash to fix it, but it's receiving the program that the smart model wrote. So it's like basically it's a very dumb approach. And what I'm finding with like the dumber approaches seem to be better than all these like bespoke approaches. So like in this, there's research into the smart model produces a specification for the change, and the dumb model makes a change. So in an effort to make the smart model write this program, you think that the program to change the program is a specification of the changes that the smart model is trying to make. So then you just pass that program that produced invalid code to the dumb model saying, here's the thing I tried, here's the file, and then it does the fast correction. And it turns out you're getting, like, in the best case scenario, you get the immediate change that you wanted. In the failure mode scenario, you like fall back and degrade to this highly optimized approach with the fast model. If that makes sense. So yeah, anyway, so that'll go out today. We'll see how well it works, but it's been wild watching this thing write code to write code.
Amazing. Well, what a wild time to be alive.
Yep.
Really.
Well, I feel like we could talk about all of this for the next 45 days.
Yeah.
Yep.
Should we wrap it, Chris? Do you want to tell us, like, what's the thing you're most excited about next, other than what you're going to ship?
The most exciting thing, I think, we focused on vibe coding so far, and that's been awesome, but I want to actually have it do these asynchronous workflows next, where you've built something, whether you bring it in existing project or whether you start it as a vibe coding app. Like, I actually want to tune it and optimize it for the existing development experience, because right now you're kind of on your own, or the agent wants to get carried away and change things because it's stuck in this like the only examples it's in a like anthropomorphic sense, the only examples it's shown or sees of itself is it going like full ham and making like all this code and writing this full project. So like it doesn't have any, kind of like a child, it wasn't told its proper behavior after you reach this like vibe starting point, right? So that's something that I'm excited about working on, because I think that's, it's easy to make a vibed experience now. We have a bunch of different companies that can give you a compelling experience. But I think, like, you know, to make useful software, whether you're a senior developer or someone that just wants to like deliver a product, they don't know code, you have to be able to like then iterate on that. So that's definitely something that I want to move into as soon as we can.
Cool. I can't wait.
Very cool.
Thanks so much for chatting with us.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
this is really, really fun. All right, I'm going to stop recording.